What's going on YouTube? Welcome back to another video, and today I have a Gem Knight deck list, but it's not pure Gem Knights. I am playing some Adamancipators in here, however I wanted to focus more towards the Gem Knight portion of the deck rather than the Adamancipator part. That's just kind of there for extensions and different levels of end board that you can play into. So without much rambling, I'm going to hop straight on into this because this profile might not be that long of a profile. Starting us off, we have 3 copies of Gem Knight Garnet, 2 copies of Gem Knight Tourmaline, and 1 copy of Gem Knight Lapis. You definitely don't have to play this many vanillas, but like I said, I wanted to focus more on Gem Knights rather than just, playing Gem Knight had Emancipator, and the only Gem Knight in the main deck being Garnet, and that's kind of it. Then I'm on 3 copies of Gem Knight Obsidian. Obsidian is super good if you send to the graveyard from your hand, or if you send from the hand to your graveyard. Sorry, wording. If you send from the hand to the graveyard, target a level 4 lower normal in your graveyard and summon it. So you use Obsidian plus any of your vanillas, you immediately get the vanilla back, and Obsidian just turns himself into a fusion. So you can make a Link monster, or possibly even an Xyz monster, Synchro monster in this deck's case. And then I'm also on 2 copies of Gem Knight Lazuli, and one, if she is sent to the graveyard by a card effect, so any means, if you Foolish Burial her, if you fusion summon with her, if you simply just board wipe somehow on both sides and she hits the graveyard by a card effect, you gotta add a Gem Knight from your grave, or a normal monster from your graveyard to your hand. And then we are on 1 copy of Quartz. Quartz is one that I read and I was like, man, this is horrible legacy support for this deck. And I still think it is, because it says if your opponent controls a monster, you can discard this card, then set a fusion continuous spell directly from your deck. And you cannot summon monsters from the extract for the rest of the turn, except Gem Knight monsters. So a little bit anti-synergistic with the whole Adamancipator part of the deck, but this card is easily boarded out. You don't need it. And that effect you're not really using. And it says if this card is used as material for a fusion summon, and sent to the graveyard or banished, you can add a Gem Knight monster from your graveyard to your hand, except itself, and you can only use that effect once per turn. It's that effect that you really want to use this for. The first effect really sucks, and the only continuous card that you're really worrying about is banned. So, and then we're also on 1 each of Crystal and Brilliant Rose. These are cards I don't have a whole lot of experience with as well in a Gem Knight build. I've played Gem Knights before, I've just never played them this way. And Crystal Rose says once per turn you can send a Gem Knight or a Melodious monster from your hand or deck to the graveyard, and this card's name becomes that sent monster's name until the end of the turn, and then if it is in your graveyard, you can banish a fusion monster from your graveyard to special summon it back in defense position. Each effect is a hard once per turn on Crystal Rose, and then Brilliant Rose is always treated as a Gem Knight card specifically, and it says you can discard 1 Gem Knight or Melodious card, special summon this card from your hand, and you can only use each of the effects once per turn. And then it says once per turn, send a Gem Knight or Melodious from your deck or extra deck to the graveyard till the end phase. This card's name type, attribute, all become the same as that sent monster's original everything till the end of the turn, basically. So these are both replacement effects, and since they send from deck, you can always send Lazuli. Brilliant Rose is really good because you can special summon it by pitching Obsidian to summon back a vanilla, or you could always pitch Quartz to fetch a Obsidian, and then you can send from hand, deck, or grave to send Lazuli or anything like that. These cards have decent well, I say decent. They have fairly high synergy, and that is it for the Gem Knight monsters. We're going to get into the spell traps that I am playing for the Gem Knights here in just a second. Starting us off with the Gem Knight spell cards. We're playing 2 copies of Gem Knight Fusion. Only 2 copies because we do have ways to search this out. And if we don't see it in our opening hand, it's not the end of the world because, like I said, there is a starter in this deck that just immediately finds this for us. And then we're also on 1 copy of Absorb Fusion. Gem Knight Fusion is just polymerization, but it has a recursion effect tacked onto it where you can banish a Gem Knight from your graveyard to add it back to your hand. Neither effect is a once per turn, so there you go. Gem Knight Fusion, definitely the best card in the deck, but you only need 2 of it because it is searchable. Then we're on 1 Absorb Fusion because it is also searchable, and it rotas for any Gem Knight monster, and then you apply the following effect where you fusion summon a Gem Knight Fusion by banishing the materials, and you can only activate 1 of it, and then you can't summon monsters the turn you activate this except Gem Knights. So this is kind of like you're trying to finish out the duel kind of card. This is definitely a card that you can board out of between games, but I would recommend playing it anyways. Most of the time, though, you're going to be searching your Gem Knight Fusion or, this card that's coming up next, which is the one of Scatter Fusion. This was their way of saying we're sorry for banning Brilliant Fusion, but we can't bring it back. And, yeah, it doesn't feel the same. It says during the main phase, if your opponent controls a monster, you can fusion summon 1 non-rock Gem Knight monster from your extra deck using monsters from your deck as material. Also, you cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck for the rest of the turn except Gem Knight monsters. You can only use this effect of Scatter Fusion once per turn. When it leaves the field, destroy all monsters summoned by this card's effect. I don't like this card. Yes, it does let you make your non-rock Gem Knight monsters, which I am only playing 1 in the extra deck. And you guys can probably tell what 1 that is. This is a card that I wish was a little bit better, but could definitely be cut out for other tech options. In fact, if you wanted to cut the Scatter Fusion out for a 3rd Gem Knight Fusion, I wouldn't blame you, but I'm playing it because it actually has some implications between going first and going second, especially with side deck options. It just kind of sucks that you get locked into Gem Knights with it, and your opponent has to have a monster. Anyways, starting us off with the Adamancipator cards now, we are on 3 Researcher, which can special summon itself if you control a rock monster, accept itself, and then you activate 5 and then you summon a level 4 lower rock that was excavated in those 5. Seeker, 2 Seeker, because he's not as good as Researcher, but he summons himself if you control an Adamancipator monster. Easy. And then excavate 5, summon a level 4 lower rock. And then we're only on 1 Analyzer. An Analyzer has the effect that if your opponent controls a monster or more monsters than you... No, if your opponent controls a monster, you can special summon this card and then excavate 5, summon a level 4 lower rock. And then we're on 3 copies of Adamancipator Signs. Because Signs is just Monster Reborn in this deck, and then if it reborns an Adamancipator monster, you can take a level 4 lower rock from your deck and place it on top of your deck. So, really good going first, really good going second. Well, mainly good going first. And that is it for the Adamancipator package, because I am only playing a small Adamancipator package. And now we kind of get into the generic stuff that you typically play in Adamancipator. And I will disclaim this now. I am not playing Doki Doki. However, if you wanted to, there are 3 vanillas here that you could replace with Doki Doki. These could be Doki Doki if you wanted them to be. Well, actually, no. you cannot replace the Lapis because of one of the cards we're playing in the extra deck. But if you want to replace that card in the extra deck and not play the Lapis, you're more than welcome to. Giving you all options. This is just how I wanted to build the deck. Then so starting off with the generic stuff, we're on 3 copies of Quackimero Guardian. Quackimero Guardian, you all should know from when Adamancipator was the best deck of no tournament wins. Quackimero Guardian is just a monster negate by tributing itself. So, having protection during your combo while using your Adamancipator cards, very nice to have. We're also on 3 copies of Rescue Rabbit. Rescue Rabbit is a very good normal summon in this deck. It makes your Gem Knight Link monster. It makes any Link 2. It makes... Well, we're not playing any Xyz monsters. Spoiler alert. But this is one of your better starters in the deck. You just go normal summon, banish it, summon out 2 Garnets, 2 of your Torlamine, or your 2 of Torlamine, whatever, just any of your vanillas, and you make your Link monster. Your Link monster fusion summons from your graveyard by putting the materials back. It's a rock monster that puts itself on the board. Rescue Rabbit is definitely a mandatory card in the deck. Then we're on 3 copies of Protoplant Orifice Scorpio, and you guys already know Orifice Scorpio has to come with the one of Darlingtonia Cobra. This is how we search out our fusion spells, because Darlingtonia Cobra can search any fusion spell in the deck just simply by going normal summon Orifice Scorpio. So if you see Scorpio and no rabbit, you can simply just go, oh, normal Scorpio, pitch a brick in your hand. Or if you open with a vanilla, the vanillas are free discard fodder. You Orifice Scorpio, pitch vanilla, summon Cobra, Cobra grab any fusion spell. There you go. Then I'm on 1 copy of Rock Band Xeno Guitar. If it's sent to the graveyard, you target a rock monster in your graveyard, except itself, add it to your hand, then place 1 card from your hand on top of the deck. And then if it's banished from your graveyard, you can send a rock monster from your deck to the graveyard. So, fairly good card. It's a Foolish Burial, which triggers the Lazuli. It also recurs a card and puts a Garnet back. And then we're also on the one of... I'm not going to try and say this thing's name. You can discard it and then normal summon an Earth or Wind or Earth or Water monster during your main phase this turn in addition to your normal summoner set. And you can only get that effect, and then if you control an Earth and Water while it's in your graveyard, you can special summon this card, but banish it when it leaves the field. Leave it, Dudley. So fairly good card. It's also a water for a specific card in the extra deck. Then we're on 1 copy of Instant Fusion to fill out that last 40 slot, or the 40th slot in the extra, or in the main deck. I like this list so far. I like this list a lot, and we're going to get into the extra deck, and I'll talk about why I like this list a fair bit more. Starting us off in the extra deck, we have our one of Gem Knight Master Diamond, because you can only play him at 1. Master Diamond, very good monster. Requires 3 Gem Knight monsters specifically, but you don't even need to worry about that. He gains 100 attack for each Gem Knight monster in your graveyard, and then you can banish a Gem Knight fusion monster from your graveyard to have his effect become that fusion monster's effect, which is usually paired in sequence with one of the monsters we will talk about later. But first, let's talk about the best fusion monster in the deck. Gem Knight Seraphinite, the only non-rock fusion we are playing. And this card is the reason why Brilliant Fusion is banned. That and the fact that people were just abusing the fact that Brilliant Fusion is a double Foolish Burial that nets you an extra body. Seraphinite also nets you an extra normal summon. Requires a Gem Knight monster plus a light monster, which I believe we are on a light monster or two. Double, yes, both of the roses are light monsters. Alright, just had to double check. And then I think that's really it for the light monsters. Oh, it's just the roses, which you don't even really need to worry about properly fusion summoning this card. I'll be honest with y'all, because we have in our extra the one of Lady Brilliant Diamond, who literally just reads once per turn. You can send a face-up Gem Knight from your, or you control to the graveyard, special summon a Gem Knight fusion from your extra deck, ignoring summoning conditions. It's just like, hey, we heard you like fusion monsters. Let me just cheat one out of the extra deck for you. So, with Lady Brilliant Diamond, and her fusion summoning requirements are the same as Master Diamond. I like Lady Brilliant Diamond a little bit more than Master Diamond, simply on the precedence of she can get Master Diamond out by sending herself, but she's a bigger body right out the gate. She also grabs you Seraphonite for free, which is great, so you don't even have to worry about fusion summoning her. And then we're also on the One Lady Lapis Lazuli, part of the famous Gem Knight FTK, you know, where you summon a million Master Diamonds and send from your extra deck to the graveyard Lady Lapis Lazuli. She can send a Gem Knight monster from your deck to the graveyard and then burn your opponent for 500 times the number of special summon monsters on the board. We're not FTKing in this deck. In fact, we're not even trying. It's just here because it's definitely one of the better options to make. It's also a really good effect to copy off of Master Diamond. It's in here as a finisher and not an FTK tool. That's what it's in here for. You can only summon all of these once per turn, or you can only summon Lazuli and Lady Master Diamond once per turn, but that doesn't matter. Then we're on one copy of Gem Knight Phantom Quartz. If it's link summoned, you can add a Gem Knight card from your deck to your hand, so Gem Knight Fusion. From your deck to your hand, pay 1,000 life points to fusion summon a Gem Knight Fusion monster from your extra deck by shuffling the materials from your hand graveyard, or hand or graveyard back into the deck. Or hand graveyard or banished back into the deck. And the monster cannot attack directly. Not a big deal. It's pay 1,000 to fusion summon something. It lets you get Master Diamond, Lady Brilliant Diamond. It's a body that sits on the board for you to tribute for Lady Master Diamond to grab the Seraphonite. Very good card. Very high synergy in the deck so far. Then we have one copy of Crossout Sheep, Cross Sheep, not Crossout Sheep. The only effects that we're going to worry about here is that if you fusion summon a monster to a zone it points to, you can special summon a level 4 lower monster from a graveyard, or Synchro is all monsters gain 700 attack. You're mainly wanting to fusion summon to the arrows this thing has. And then we're on the one IP Masquerena, and the targets for IP we have are Underworld Goddess and Nightmare Unicorn. I mean, you guys already know the last few slots are going to be dedicated to synchros, and I really don't think I need to talk too much about Underworld Goddess and Nightmare Unicorn. Having a kaiju in the extra deck, always at your disposal, and being able to make it unaffected by just about everything is really nice to have. Then we're on our one copy of Adamancipator Risen Dragite. This card is also really good for pushing for game, but it's also a spell trap negate if you have a water monster in your graveyard, which is why we're playing the one of this guy. Yep. So I'm gonna just kind of glance over that one. Then we have Raptite, which just excavate, or the only effect we're really gonna worry about is excavating 5 and summon a rock monster of any level in defense position, and then put the rest on the bottom. If you control a wind monster, you can quick effect target a card, or target a card in your opponent's graveyard and banish it, but this card's not sticking around that long. Then we have one copy of Borreload Savage Dragon. Borreload Savage Dragon, very self-explanatory. You just target a link in your graveyard, equip it, it gets counters. And then you can remove a counter to omni-negate something without destroying, of course. Then we're on one copy of Nat Beast. We actually don't mind milling ourselves in this list because the Gem Knight monsters play from the graveyard. In fact, if you mill the Lazulis from the graveyard or from the deck to the graveyard off of Nat Beast, you then get the Lazuli effect because it was sent to the graveyard by a card effect. So Nat Beast really good here. Not once per turn. Mill 2 cards, negate a spell card. Really, really good. And we do have plenty of ways to make it. Then we're on one copy of Herald of the Arclight because it's a level 4 that we can also make in the deck. And lastly, we are on the one copy of Ancient Fairy Dragon just as a way to put a free body onto the board. And that is it for the extra. There are a lot of effects to talk about here, which is why it's taking so long to get through this, but I promise, guys, we're almost done. Starting us off in this side deck. The side deck is going to be 3 copies of Book of Moon, because Book of Moon is really good right now. 3 copies of Dark Ruler No More, because going second Ruler is a godsend for this deck. Then we are on 2 copies of Lightning Storm, 1 copy of Feather Duster, because, you know, back row is a thing right now with Labyrinth. Being able to take Labyrinth out or knock it down a peg is always really, really nice. And then here's a wild one. We're on 1 copy of Super Poly. That's in here for another card that's in the side deck. And this card is searchable. Then we're also on 1 copy of Monster Reborn. And lastly, we're on 3 copies of Evenly Matched. And that card that I said Super Poly is in here for. 1 copy of Garura Wings of Resonant Life. Because it's a really good Super Poly target and it helps break the board. And honestly, playing Orifice Scorpio in the main deck makes this combo just a really easy thing to kind of get to. And with all of this being said, I'm going to cut the recording and come back once I have all of the stuff back in the proper order. Alright, and that is it for my Gem Knight deck profile. And yes, I'm naming this a Gem Knight deck profile because if you look at the ratios, Gem Knight, all the Gem Knight cards take up this big of a chunk out of the main deck. Adamancipators take up next to nothing. This is the Adamancipator and everything else, which is why I call this my Gem Knight deck. And as I said, that's going to be it for the deck profile. If you guys did enjoy, let me know down in the comment section below. I tried to say certain things about what cards you could take out and replace if you don't want to focus so heavily on Gem Knights. And let me guys know if you want to see test hands with this deck, or if you guys just want to see me do or play other decks, build other decks. I am moving very, very soon, so probably not going to have a video or stream next week. Unless, yeah, probably not. And so, with that being said, I will see everybody whenever I can get back to this. Peace.